Welcome back to another innovation review. Today, we're going to talk about the NGN E450 from Engine Lab. Before we dive into this review, just wanted to give you a quick update. When we were testing this bike, we weren't able to get the top speed that it said it was capable of, and it turns out we had a setting wrong in the advanced settings menu. So we were able to work with Engine Labs and get that top speed out of there, but for this review, wasn't able to get the top speed, so I do comment on that in the review. The second update is when we were removing the battery, apparently we weren't going about it quite the right way, so Engine Labs reached out to us and they sent us some of their instructions on how to get this battery out the right way, and it does make it a little bit easier, and so I'll have a link to those down in the pinned comment in the top. And that's it for updates, so let's get to it. The E450 has a very utilitarian vibe about it and has quite a few features. So when you look at the bike, it does look like there is quite a bit going on. We've got this front rack, we've got the rear rack, and all of those components are sort of unique. They look kind of different than most of the stuff we've seen out on the road. Then there's some aspects of this bike that are sleek and minimalist. We've got this carbon belt instead of a chain, so we don't have to worry about any of these extra cables and derailleurs. So both sides of the bike come across as very clean. It's got a very nice low step-through and an integrated battery, so all in all, it does have sort of a sleek, high-tech, feature-rich sort of vibe about it. As far as styles, they do offer a mid-step and a step-through. We've also got red, white, black, and blue as far as colors to choose from. Right out of the gate, there are a few things that I want to mention about this particular model. This is a sample bike, so this is not a production model. There are a few things here that are going to be slightly different than the direct-to-consumer version. And so even though this is a really good proof of concept and not a lot of big things are changing on it, I do want to talk about some of the things that are different on this specific model. The first thing to note is the frame here. It didn't come out of the molding and tooling, so the surfaces are a little bit less lustrous than they will be for the end product. The front and rear rack that we have here are just some handmade samples, so they haven't gone through the heat treat process. The pictures that they have up on the website are going to be a much better representation of the front rack and kind of what that's going to look like. The front and rear light are also mock-ups that they made. They haven't gone through the whole production process, so they do work, they are functional. They're just not as glossy and as sexy as they're going to be in the final product. Now, when I received the bike, it did come in a secondary package, and so they had to remove the front wheel and they shipped it over to me. Now, when it comes to the direct-to-consumer sample, the thing that you'd be getting if you bought this bike, you're only going to have to do a few things. Basically, you're going to have to turn the headset around so it's facing the right way, install the handlebars and the pedals, and you'll be good to go. So those are the only three things you'll have to do from an assembly standpoint, which is pretty simple. I imagine one of our casual Friday videos would be about 10 seconds if that's really all we had to do was pop it out, twist some stuff, pop it in, and boom, we're off to the races. I just want to start the review off with a couple of those little things. So the sample bike here is not the best representation of the final product based on a few of those small little things. Next, let's talk about the motor. The motor we have here is a rear hub geared motor, and it has 500 watts nominal output. We were able to get a little bit more than that as far as peak wattage goes, and it definitely felt like it had a lot of power to it. It's got 80 Newton meters of torque, and even though we didn't have a lot of big hills to test this out on, you can definitely feel the power that it has. So it really is putting in some torque there. As far as the motor noise goes, it was very on par, maybe even a little bit quieter than some of the rear hubs that we've tested in the past, right around that 500 watt range. It's definitely not full ninja mode, but it's not too unpleasant to listen to. Next, let's talk about the battery. The battery we have here is a lockable, removable Samsung battery. This one has 48 volts, 14 amp hours, and 672 watt hours. It is lithium ion and takes about 5 hours to get a full charge on here. I would think 5 to 6 is probably a reasonable estimate to assume that you would need. So planning ahead, you're like, hey, got to give myself about 6-ish hours to get a full charge if it's completely dead, when you're going to charge it. Once you do have it fully charged, you should be able to get anywhere between 30 to 60 miles per charge. As I'd mentioned, this is a removable battery, so it's fairly simple to pop in and remove it from the bottom of the frame. The only issue that I found was you just kind of had to get that wheel at the right angle in order for the battery to come out. Not really a huge deal because it's not like you're going to be doing this after every single ride, and if that's the case, that might get kind of annoying, but if you're doing this once a week, it's not a big deal to kind of, fiddle around and get to the right spot so you can pull it out of the frame. If you want to charge it, you don't have to take it out of the frame either, so if that's an option, you're like, hey, it's just going to be in my garage, that's where I charge it up anyway, then you'd never remove the battery and, it wouldn't be an issue. The battery weighs about 8 pounds, which is kind of on par with a lot of the batteries that we have seen, maybe a little bit on the lighter side when we are looking at the watt hours here, but not too bad to handle with one hand using the key to unlock it. No, it's not too bad. Next, let's talk about the brakes. The brakes we have here are XOD hydraulic disc brakes with 180mm rotors both on the front and the rear. It is really cool to see the hydraulic braking system here, especially at this price point for this bike with all these other features included. So I'm glad they went the extra step to give us that extra braking power. Now, since this is a Class 2 bike and it's only going to be going up to that 20-ish miles per hour, you probably don't need a hydraulic disc brakes because the bike isn't that heavy and you're not really going that fast. But again, it's just kind of nice to have the extra stopping power there. Next, let's talk about the gears. Well, I said gears, but it's really just the one gear because we've got this single-speed carbon fiber belt here. And I am a big fan of the carbon fiber belts in general. I think that they pulled it off pretty well with this model. We do get a little bit of ghost pedaling when we get to those higher speeds, so it's probably something that they could tweak as far as the gearing goes for it. And then starting off, it is a little bit on the heavy side, so I'm not sure if there's a happier medium that they could find here as far as getting that ratio down. But at the end of the day, we do get this carbon fiber belt and, kind of a little bit more set and forget it when compared to the chains and having to switch gears. And you've got the derailleur again, where we've eliminated a lot of those extra mechanical parts on the bike by, going with this carbon fiber belt. Next, let's talk about the extras. In opposition to the gears, this is probably the longest chapter because there are a ton of extras that come with this bike. And we're just going to go ahead and start from the front and work our way to the back. So first off, we have got a front headlight. It's integrated into the frame. It's cool to see that. One of the things that I like about this is it attaches to another extra, which is that front rack. And they give you the cabling to make that work, and you can mount it underneath there. So I thought that was pretty cool. There is an option for you to mount it in a different spot. So let's say if you didn't want the front rack, then you could mount the light into a different area. So it's nice that they gave us the option there. So if you got the front rack, you can put that light out ahead of you. Nothing from the rack will be getting in the way of the light, which is nice. And if you don't need the front rack, you've got the option to mount it up here to the frame. Just underneath that, we have got the front fender. Now, the way that the fender mounts here is pretty typical of some bikes that we have seen, and I thought it was going to be somewhat of a pain in the butt. They've got the support arms that go inside the frames, but everything was designed well. I'm still able to get in there and tighten those up with an Allen key, so no issues there. And they are a black color. They match the rest of the bike, so as far as the fenders go, I think they were pretty sweet. Then we have got this lock that comes on the bike. I'm not sure what the specs are on this particular lock, but it is nice that you have this lock here, so if you do go someplace you need to lock the bike, you don't have to remember it. It's just kind of integrated in here, and if you don't want it, you can take it off and put it in a bottle holder or something like that. Then we have got the suspension seat post. So we don't have any suspension on the front fork or the rear fork, so it was awesome they included that suspension seat post here. As you know, I am a big fan of these, and this particular one seemed to function pretty well. Then we've got the rear rack with the integrated taillight in it as well. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, the rear rack here is just a handmade sample, hasn't gone through the hardening process, so we're not able to test it out or find out, how much weight can this thing hold. But it does look pretty cool, and once they have those, final heat-treated versions, I think they'll be good to go. And as I mentioned, we do have that rear taillight, so the nice thing here is we don't have to carry on any extra batteries. It's drawing power from the big battery here. And we do have brake integration, so as soon as we hit the brakes, it is going to flash in the back, letting people know that we're coming to a stop. Next, let's talk about the essentials. As I had mentioned, this was a sample bike, so I didn't get the full experience of unpacking it out of the box, seeing all of the accessories that are included here. So I'm not 100% sure what the final product is going to be. So if you did order one of these bikes and you've received it, I would love to know what they sent you. I would like to know what they're doing. That'd be awesome. So let me know down below, and we'll just kind of keep that updated as we go along. Next, let's talk about the suspension. As we mentioned, there is no traditional suspension on either the front fork or the rear of the frame here, but we do have that suspension seat post. And we already talked a little bit about that. Basically, I like it. Functions well. I'm super glad they included it here on this particular model. The other part of suspension we like to talk about are the tires. The tires that we have on this bike are 27.5-inch Kendas, but for the direct-to-consumer bikes, it looks like they are going to be upgrading that to some 27x5 Panasonic tires. And I think those are the same ones they use on the KBO Breeze, if I'm not mistaken. And as I've had a lot of experience on those tires, I can say that I am a big fan. I believe the KBO Breeze also has some sidewall reflective stripes as well, so I hope that they will include that or at least have that particular model. Because the bike has so many lights integrated, it is kind of presumed you'd be able to ride this at night. So adding those reflective sidewall stripes would just be an extra level of protection if you did choose to ride this bike around at night. The last part of suspension we talk about is the butt suspension. The saddle we have here is a Tingbo Sports saddle. Now, I haven't ridden on this particular saddle before, but it fit me pretty well. I really don't have any complaints. I think that even if the seat wasn't that great, like if it was less great than it is, having that suspension seat post on there will just make it a more pleasant experience overall. So is this something I would upgrade if I kept the bike long term? Probably not. Next, let's talk about the controls. The E450 has a 2.25-inch grayscale LCD display. It is fairly bright, wasn't very difficult for me to see, even outside in the direct sunlight, so that was excellent. The button layout over here is very similar to most of the e-bikes we see. We've got up and down, which is going to change our pedal assist level up or change our pedal assist level down. We've got the middle button, which will turn on the bike, and it will help us cycle through some of the things that this screen is going to tell us. And some of those things are the battery level, the speed at which we're going, the odometer, the trip distance, the time, and the wattage. Jumping back to the buttons, if we hold down the up button, that will turn on the lights. And if we hold it down again, that's going to turn off the lights. And then if we hold down the bottom button, that is going to enter us into walk mode. And again, popping out of walk mode, we can either hold down that button again, or we can just tap on the brakes. We do have brake inhibitors that are going to cut off the power to the motor. Next, let's talk about who this bike might be for. The two main geometry measurements that I like to focus on are the reach and the standover height. And on the E450, the reach is 14.25 inches, which is very short. And then we have got 18.5 inches for the standover height. Now, when we compare that to some bikes that we see, 28-inch standover height, 30-inch standover height, an 18.5-inch standover height is something that is very approachable for most people. Some of those other measurements are a 24-inch minimum saddle height and a 30-inch maximum saddle height. We've got 26-inch width here at the handlebars, a 45-inch wheelbase, and a 70-inch length overall. So let's say that the reach and the standover height sound good for you and you're looking to get this bike. What you might use this bike for is a short to medium distance commuter. This is a bike that has a lot of options for storing things, bringing things along for your trip. I feel like it would make an excellent delivery vehicle if you have the modifications on the rear rack. And the bike doesn't fold, and we do have those big, 27.5-inch tires, so it's not something that I see people packing up a lot to take it to other places. So I'm thinking it's more of a urban vehicle, something you'd ride around the neighborhood, take the kids to the pool, pick up groceries. But then if you wanted to go out and, say, hit up a national park and go through some of those trails, it is going to be a very comfortable ride, really upright riding position, and something I could see myself spending a few hours on and not be sore or tired at the end of it. And that's just my opinion on what the best use case for this bike might be. I'm sure there are plenty of other scenarios that would work really well for this bike. And that pretty much covers it for the nuts and bolts of the bike. So let's head outside for the ride test. All right, guys, here we are for the ride test. And before we power the bike on, let's go ahead and see where the gearing sits. And we'll just pedal this thing around as it is geared. So it's a little bit of a heavy gear. Probably feels like a 6, maybe a 5 on a 7 speed if I could compare it to something. But all in all, not too bad. A little bit of work once you get going, but now that we're going, got this speed, probably say 8, 9, 10 miles per hour. Very comfortable pace, very comfortable riding position, very upright. One of the nice things about having this adjustable headset is that you can really bring these bars up. So I'm sitting pretty much straight up and down, and then we can go in here and we can kind of adjust where the handlebars are sitting. So let's go ahead and turn it on. All right, so let's go ahead and scoot across the road here. And some power from the pedal assist there. And go ahead and use the throttle at that point. Now, one of the things about this bike, and it's marketed somewhat as a safety feature, is it doesn't give you the throttle right off the bat, which for some people is probably not a bad move. That's why it kind of acts as a little bit of a safety mechanism. However, with that sort of, higher gearing, that 6-ish, things, if I could compare it to that, it's really one of those things that you probably would want to turn off. Now, I'm pretty sure that's something we could probably pop in here and turn that off in the advanced settings, but we have not. So as the bike comes, it will probably be that way, where you'll have to pedal a little bit to turn the throttle on. So let's go ahead and let's put it in pedal assist level 1, and we're just going to run through the pedal assist levels and see what sort of speed, what sort of feeling we can get here. So pedal assist level 1, nice easy turn on. Now, one of the things about this bike, as we mentioned, this is a test unit slash demo unit, so this is not the bike that everybody's going to be receiving. Now, keeping that into consideration, one of the things that the company told me was that pedal assist level 1 and 2 are going to be turned down by about 25%. I guess they were getting some feedback that pedal assist level 1 and 2 were just a little too strong, and people wanted a little bit less in those particular gears. Now, that's not going to change the top speed. That just has to do with how they've got the percentages for pedal assist level 1, pedal assist level 2, and then 3, 4, 5 should be the same. So pedal assist level 1 feels good at this point. Honestly, for me, I kind of like it where it's at, but I understand there may be some people that want a little bit more of a riding experience, want to put in a little bit more work, and that's fine. So that's, that's what they're gearing that towards. Let's go ahead and go to pedal assist level 2. Getting a little bit more power from the motor here. And that's taking us up to about that 17 miles per hour, which, as we mentioned, it probably should be dropped down a little bit to give us that proper spacing here with the different gears. So pedal assist level 3 feels like it's getting a little bit more power here. Pedal assist level 4 taking us up to that 20 miles per hour, and pedal assist level 5 taking us past that 20 miles per hour to that 21, 22 miles per hour. Now, one of the things to note about how this one is geared, and like I said, this is the test demo unit, so I'm sure this is something they could probably fix in the mass production. Once you get to this speed, so we're going 20 miles per hour, pedal assist level 5, we do get a little bit of ghosting. I don't know if you can tell here. I am pedaling pretty fast, and I feel like I don't have very much resistance. Again, I think that's something they could change pretty easily, and we would just want something that is a little bit more resistance here for that top speed. So let's go ahead and slow down a little bit. Like we mentioned, there is that safety feature, so we're going to keep rolling just a little bit for that throttle. We've got in pedal assist level 5, and let's test this out. In that 13, 14, 15, 17. So what I found is that with the throttle, it takes us up to that 18.5-ish mark pretty well. And I've had it go up to 19 before, but it doesn't really hit that full 20 miles per hour with just the throttle. Again, probably something that can be tweaked a little bit in the final version. Now, as far as the ride goes, go ahead and do a little braking over here. Okay. A little bit of a skid there, but it stops very quick. We've got these XODs on here. There's the bell. Didn't mean to hit that, but there it is. And so it is nice that, we've got some brakes on here that are going to bring this thing to a stop. Not overly heavy when we compare it to a lot of the other e-bikes, especially, only going this speed. But having the extra braking power here is nice. Nice to see the upgrade from mechanical to hydraulics here. And again, pedal assist level 5, very sporty, feels very good up to that 15, 16 miles per hour, gets there real quick. So as far as the feel goes, one of the things that you'll notice is there is no suspension on the front fork or the rear fork, but we do have that suspension seat post. So as you guys know, I'm a big fan of the suspension seat post. It really does add a lot for the smoothness of the ride. We've got these slightly larger than normal tires as far as the width goes, so that's also going to help. And so all in all, the ride here is very smooth. I mean, very, very smooth. It feels really powerful as well, which I enjoy. Some people may want to keep it in those lower gears, and again, they're kind of adjusting pedal assist level 1 and 2. But as far as the ride and the general feel, I am a fan. So it's getting a little bit later in the evening. I wanted to go do this ride test a little bit earlier, but we were having some pretty decent rain come through, and it's pretty sporadic too, so it's not like, oh, it's done for the day. It was, you know, sit in the garage, wait around for a while before we could pop out here and do this. But I want to go ahead and turn the lights on. Again, not completely dark yet, but let's see. Let's kind of dip in here. A little bit darker in here. So to turn the lights on, all we're going to do is hold down this top button. So go ahead and turn that on, and then the lights come on. We can pop off and look at that. So one of the things that I like is the front light mounts right here to the front of the basket. So with some of these bikes, the light will pretty much stay in the same spot, and maybe there's some aftermarket options and stuff, but what's nice about this particular rack is they give us that option to mount the front light right here. And then if you didn't have the front rack, there's other ways that you can mount it. You could either mount it, you know, up here to where the basket's mounted, or up here to where the front fender boss is. Then back here, we've got the tail light, mostly blocked by my other GoPro here, and we do have tail light integration to the brake, so when we go ahead and stop, it's going to flash, which is nice. When you have lights that are integrated into the battery, it's so much better than, you know, the alternative, which is obviously not integrated into the battery. Let's go ahead and leave those on. So we don't have to worry about bringing around any sort of weird batteries, small batteries, making sure they're charged, nothing like that. We just turn on the bike, and as long as we got juice in the battery, we are good to go. And then, of course, it leads to things like being able to hit the brakes, and those brake lights will go off as well. So you guys know I'm pretty much a let's see how fast the bike can go. I think when everybody sends me pictures of their bikes, I'm like, top speed, question mark. So for me, it would be cool to get this bike to go a little bit faster. You know, it's a class 2 and it's doing what a class 2 is supposed to do. But I would feel comfortable on this, you know, going up to that, you know, 28, 30 miles per hour, really flying around here. Got those nice heavy brakes on here. Not heavy brakes, but these powerful brakes. And it's a very comfortable riding position. And you know what? So we're pedaling, right? We're in pedal assist level 5, but I'm feeling a lot less ghosting going this way. I guess we are going into the wind a little bit. I don't know if you can hear that on the audio, so maybe that's kind of adding to it. But again, just something they could probably tweak. So we're getting a good solid pedaling consistency, because even if I go real slow, I can still hit that top speed, but I'm not getting, you know, any resistance. Or at least it feels like I'm not getting any resistance here. A couple of the other nice features with this bike are all of the extras that it comes with. It comes with that front rack, it comes with the rear rack. We've also got the fenders on the front and the rear. The other nice thing is we've got these fenders. Now they are metal as opposed to plastic. And as you guys know, I am a fan of the thicker, kind of more durable plastic fenders. But I feel like they fit the bike really well. And this front one, because that down tube is so wide, one of the nice things about that is it almost kind of acts like a fender. Now the battery is down there, so having the fender is going to protect the battery and so on and so forth, so that's excellent to have that. But even if you didn't, I feel like you'd still be pretty well protected from just the width of that beefy down tube there. Now as far as motor noise goes, this is one that you do hear the motor a little bit. I would say it's definitely on par with most of the motors that, you know, we get. It's a rear geared hub motor and they all kind of sound the same. I think there are some that maybe miss the mark a little bit, but this particular one kind of right on par with everything that people got going on in the industry. So I don't really have any complaints about that. I do like these grips. So we've got these ergonomic, they are rubber. They've got a really good texture to them, a really good, I don't know, I like them. They, you know, they move just a little bit, not the grips themselves. You know, we've got these locking points up here, but we do have just a little bit of flex that just makes it seem real nice and comfortable. And then of course the thumb throttle, which you guys know I'm a big fan of, as opposed to having a half grip over here and then some, you know, some twist throttle. So yeah, the overall feel of the bike, I like. I wish I would have figured out how to turn off the little safety start business there so I could use the throttle. But you know what? We adapt and we overcome. Now, as far as the display goes over here, we do get, you know, quite a few options. We can turn the lights on and off. Now, this is all adapted into the display. We see a lot of these displays where the buttons will be separate, they'll be in a different spot. So it is kind of nice to have all this stuff right here. I don't know if I prefer having a screen over here to the left-hand side or the center, but one of the things I noticed is I wasn't really looking at the screen too much while we were out here, unless I was, you know, specifically pointing something out. So maybe I do prefer kind of that middle screen. It's a little bit easier to glance down. Yeah, maybe I do. Look at me learning all about myself right now. So let's go ahead and cycle through some of the stuff so it can tell us, you know, how far we've gone this trip, the time the bike's been on, and then the watts power we're pulling. So like right now we're going 20 miles per hour. We're only pulling 100 watts. So, and we are out here to the recently rained on trails. Let's take it through the mud a little bit. Now these tires are designed for the city, they're designed for the street, so this is not something you necessarily want to do. And really it's not too muddy, just a little damp over here. But again, that suspension seat post really absorbing pretty much all of these shocks. And I'm just flying through here. Sorry, there was some gnats there. Flying through here, not really putting in too much power, pulling about 250, 300 watts as far as the motor goes. Let's go ahead and just use the throttle here. That's going to drop us down in watts power quite a bit, but still hanging around that 18 mile an hour mark. But we like going fast. Let's keep rolling through here. Whoa, that's what I'm talking about. All right, guys, I think that is going to do it for our review of the Step-Through from Engine Labs. If you guys want to know more, I'll have a link to their website down below. If you guys got any questions for me specifically, let me know down in the comments. I love talking to you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.